Video games have been cultural to us for many years. Companies such as Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, and so many others have entered the video game market and are still standing and operating as of now. Atari began the mainstream trend in video games with its success of Pong. The aim of the game takes the concept from tennis in real life, where we serve a ball and someone has to repel the ball once it is hit. However, if the ball goes past the player on the opposing side, the repeller gains a point. Everything was black and white at the time because we didn't have the technology required to represent colours in images, making things look slightly dull. After the success of Pong, we started inventing new genres for video games, invented new concepts for our consoles, taking our visual graphics from each level to the next, thus making new video games. Ladies and gentlemen, today we will be talking about the history of video games, from sprites to models. What is going on, everyone? It is Mr. 64, the creator of the Alphabet Boys, and one half of AniFlash.
I'm Jakey. I'm a casting director for the Alphabet Boys and one other half of AniFlash. Gaming has evolved exponentially since the dawn of the first video games, and nowadays it's even surpassed the likes of the movie industry. Games have gone from dots onto the screen to whole open-world expansive games. It was never always like this. So in this first part, let's discuss the humble beginnings of the companies that would change the world forever.
Sega, a once video game developer, now turned third-party software developer, is known for the blue burr who we all know and love, Sonic the Hedgehog. The company started operations in April 1951 as an operators unit in a military facility for importing, selling and maintaining amusement equipment, who would then later expand their business into manufacturing game consoles prior to 2001. This is what led them into becoming Sega Corporation as of today. 1972 saw the start of a new video game company that has been around since Computer Space was released in 1971. That new video game company at the time was known as Atari Incorporated, the term from a Japanese video game known as Go. The name Atari was chosen after the first choice, Syzygy, wasn't available. Atari had then released Pong the following year. We will get to Pong later on in this video, so hang tight.
Microsoft's beginnings were certainly humble. Two friends, Bill Gates and Paul Allen, wished to start a company based on their knowledge of computer programming. They created what would be known as the Microsoft Disk Operating System, otherwise known as MS-DOS, a text-based operating system that would found the basis for the Windows architecture. Why is this relevant? We have to jump to 1998. Sega and Microsoft would work together on the Sega Dreamcast, which we'll focus on later, to build in a version of Windows CE in, and the rest is history. Sony was founded in 1946, a small electronics store in World War II. They made Japan's first tape recorder, the Type G, in 1958. The name Sony was actually changed in 1958 also. Root words being Sonus, funnily enough meaning Sonic and Speed, and Sony, which in Japanese slang meant young boys back in the 50s. In 1979 they would release their Walkman music player, their first proper foray into the CD/media market. This part is very important in the future, so make sure you remember this. Nintendo is known for being one of the most popular companies in terms of gaming in general. Many people don't know about the company is its history. Nintendo originally started making playing cards or Hanafuda cards under the name Nintendo Playing Card Company in 1889. Even made cards for companies as big as Disney. However, they eventually expanded to other ventures, such as instant rice, taxi service, and love hotels. In 1977, they would create the device that would precede all of the company's future endeavors, basically set them in stone.
Our very first video game we have started with was Pong, released in 1972 for arcade systems, and home releases were to be followed 2 years later in 1974 as the first video game could be released for public consumers. To those of you who are baby boomers, you would have gotten some knowledge about this video game as the first successful hit. Selling 150,000 units worldwide, we have found a start in the video game industry because we wanted to prove that video games can produce such a significant number of profit in terms of revenue.
Pong is relevant to us because of Tennis for Two. Video game released in 1958, the original concept for tennis in a video game comes from. If it wasn't made, there wouldn't have been video games to call their own. Plus, no video game consoles for us to play at home, or to even play on the go.
Although with the success in terms of revenue for Pong, at some point during 1973 to 74, Magnavox had filed a lawsuit against Atari for apparent infringement on their exclusive rights. The reason for this lawsuit was similar in terms of concept and design, and with Bushnell attending the demo for Magnavox Odyssey, court didn't happen to take effect, and no lawsuits were present.
3 consoles/series were released in Generation 1, which is what we know as the beginning of a new era.
The Odyssey series, released from 1975 to 77 and developed by Magnavox.
TV Tennis Electro Tennis, released in 1975 and developed by Epoch and Magnavox.
And last but not least, the Color TV game series, released from 1977 to 1980 and developed by Nintendo as their very first video game consoles. Our first 9 video game consoles were manufactured and or developed by Magnavox, with those being Odyssey 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 2000, 3000, 4000, and 5000, with 5000 being a prototype and its technology being transitioned onto the Magnavox Odyssey 2, released in 1978 as the second generation video game consoles. In 1973, the year after Pong was released, Ralph Baer, an inventor and game developer, was testing new features to his Odyssey system, including sound and cartridge components with VFX. He wanted to know that these new technologies would allow integration for a whole Odyssey system in one or more simple integrated circuits via Dragon's several semiconductor houses to study how achievable his new idea could be. There are 3 semiconductor houses he used for his idea. Those 3 being General Instruments, abbreviated as GI, Texas Instruments, abbreviated as TI, and Most Technology, abbreviated as Most Tech. Baer was worried about his discovery not going to be feasible, but in 1974, things started to shift in the right direction when TI signed a deal with Magnavox to design the chips. However, due to a delay in designing of the chips, Magnavox had to greenlight the design themselves, using discrete components. A new semiconductor house, National Semiconductor, proposed a one-chip project to be released to public consumers by the first quarter of 1975. It has been available since August 1975. With the technology that Baer has provided during 1975, we bring you the Odyssey 100 and 200.
The consoles share technical aspects with the first console Magnavox developed, the Odyssey. Magnavox decided to start a line of consoles in 1975, the C100 being a simpler version of the original Odyssey. Featured 2 monochrome games without an on-screen scoring system to indicate how many points a player has, those being tennis and hockey.
Speaking of tennis and hockey, those games are cultural to any of us who are a baby boomer or a part of Gen X, because tennis and hockey incorporated Pong's mechanics and gameplay style. The latter's gameplay was put into play with one of the mini games of Wii Play, Laser Hockey, while tennis's mechanics and Pong itself have both inspired Choice Provisions, formerly known as Gaijin Games, who are an indie game developer, to make a game similar to Pong known as Bit Trip Beat.
Without these games, we wouldn't have had a scoring system for any of the games that we play nowadays, and we wouldn't even have games such as Sonic the Hedgehog and Super Mario. We wouldn't have any games that would need a scoring system in general.
The next 3 consoles were released in 1976, and they feature colours so we can represent images clearly, which are Odyssey 300, 400 and 500.
Magnavox continued Odyssey's legacy by releasing the Odyssey 300. It's a cultural gaming system because it contains a single chip for circuitry of a Pong system. It was Magnavox's response to the Coleco Telstar, which included the same games Magnavox had. It included handball and shooting range games. What is even more cultural about O300 was that it was the first to support a GI A3 A500 chip and had Odyssey 400. It was an improved version of 200, included digital on-screen scoring.
While the O300 included games that were new around its time, the GI AY3 8500 chip was very new, and it contained a video game system. Certain parts had to be interfaced by the user via hand control. Color coding was also available from the AY3 8600 and AY3 8610 chips to produce colored pictures.
Actually, Odyssey 500 was released same year as Odyssey 300 and Odyssey 400. It sports true colourful graphics, as well as the sprites displaying actual players, using rackets and sticks depending on the sport.
From that point onwards, it wasn't about Magnavox referring to their consoles in terms of hundreds. No, it was all about thousands. Those models each contained a GI chip, but because of them being stemmed down from their predecessors, the Odyssey thousands didn't feel as interesting as we all thought. But nonetheless, say hello to the Odyssey 2000, 3000, 4000, and the prototype model of what would have been Odyssey 5000.
Odyssey 2000 shared the same hardware as Odyssey 3000, had a 4th game of practice, 1-player version of Swxtch. Odyssey 3000 had a design overhaul, detachable controllers and 4 different difficulty settings. Odyssey 4000 featured all games in color, included the feature to control the player. The prototype Odyssey 5000 would have contained a Swxtch chip. Specifically, the MUGS1 would have been 24 different games, 7 different genres, up to 2 to 4 player compatibility options. However, because of the Fairchild Channel F being released, didn't come to reality. However, at least the technology migrated over to Odyssey 2, the successor to the Odyssey.
The next video game console in this generation is the TV Tennis Electro Tennis. It was released in 1975 in Japan by Epoch and Magnavox, making this console Japan's first native video game console to be solely released in that country. TV Tennis Electro Tennis beat multi-millionaire electronics company Nintendo to the console/video game market by 2 years.
What's special about the TV Tennis Electro Tennis is that it had the ability to connect to your TV wireless using a UHF antenna. At least it seems to us. We all have the ability to play our video games through a wired component.
By selling 10,000 units, this console did impressively well for Epoch and possibly even Magnavox. We should definitely give kudos to Epoch for making a console that enables us to play video games onto the television wirelessly.
We get into the big stuff of video game consoles. Nintendo released their first video game consoles, known as the Color TV Game series. 4 of those consoles were Color TV Game 6, Color TV Game 15, TV Racing 112, Computer TV Game. They were released during 1977 to 1980, built-in media as the game format, to what the Electro Tennis had.
Released in 1977 in Japan, Color TV Game 6 was Nintendo's first official video game console, thus their first manufactured product. It features 6 different versions of light tennis, hence the console's name. Light tennis is cultural because of Pong's mechanics and gameplay being ported over to that game. What makes CTG 6 cultural is that it incorporates Magnavox Odyssey 3000's difficulty settings and colour overlays from Odyssey 500, as well as the knobs for movement on the controllers.
The second console, TV Game 15, was released in the same time as TV Game 6. But it comes with the same hardware as TV Game 6, detachable controllers, 15 different variations of light tennis. The consoles have sold over 1 million units. Taking the start of Nintendo's journey into the console market, we'll now take you to 1978, and Nintendo gave us the largest console they've ever given us in existence, TV Game Racing 112. Resembles a car's dashboard with a built-in steering wheel and gear stick. But obviously things that we would use in a real car.
Our last video game console that we will be talking about in Gen 1 today is what ended this generation. I present to you the computer TV game. The name somewhat rings a bell to Gen Xers who have purchased a Famicom, also known as the Nintendo Entertainment System, because the name pays homage to that console that we are talking about today. Now that all of the talking is aside, one of the games that you can play on the computer TV game system makes us think about OXO and/or noughts and crosses, also known as tic-tac-toe for those who live in the NTSC regions. However, how you play in this game feels different, because you need to fill the board with the most spaces of your chosen symbol to win, and it will continue when there are no spaces left to fill.
That's all we've got time for on the first episode of S2M. We'll be back for Generation 2, which is Rise of the Handhelds, so stay tuned for that.
Thank you for watching. If you want to watch more videos, click on the screen. I have been Mr. 64, and we will see you in the next video.